In the frigid expanse of space surrounding the planet Gelidus, the human terraforming team watched in anticipation as an alien vessel descended through the dense, icy atmosphere. Gelidus, with its endless snowscapes and bone-chilling temperatures, was an unlikely candidate for a first-contact scenario, yet here they were, witnessing history. Commander Jacob Torres, a veteran of Earth's polar core, was the first to spot the ship's sleek metallic surface cutting through the thick clouds of ice particles. His team, assembled in the main control room of their base, stood behind him, their faces a mix of curiosity and tension. The alien ship, a marvel of engineering with its fluid, dynamic shape, landed smoothly on the ice field a few kilometers from the human outpost. The silence that followed was almost as heavy as the planet's gravity. "Don't just stand there," Jacob said, breaking the silence. "Let's give our guests a proper welcome." As they approached the landing site, equipped with only the standard environmental suits, Jacob and his team could feel the heavy vibrations from the alien engines through their boots. The air was thick with the mist of sublimated ice, creating a surreal, foggy landscape. The ship's hatch opened slowly, revealing its occupants. The Kyroxi, as they introduced themselves, were significantly taller than humans, their limbs elongated and their skin a translucent silver that shimmered in the low light. Their suits were clearly high-tech, with visible adaptations for thermal regulation, necessary for surviving Gelidus's harsh conditions. Commander Silas, the leader of the Kyroxi delegation, stepped forward with a grace that seemed almost choreographed. Their voice, when they spoke, was soft yet carried easily through the icy air. "We come in peace and with curiosity," Silas said, their words translated seamlessly by the device at their waist. "Your ability to exist in such extreme environments is of great interest to us." Jacob, ever the diplomat despite his rough exterior, extended his hand, a gesture that Silas mimicked after a moment's hesitation, their hand cool and smooth against his. "This planet challenges us every day," Jacob replied, his breath visible in the air. "But humans have a knack for adapting to all kinds of worlds. Gelidus is our home now, as much as any place can be." As the two commanders exchanged formalities and the necessary pleasantries, Jacob couldn't help but feel a pang of pride. Here, on a world that was more ice than land, humanity was not just surviving but thriving enough to draw the galaxy's gaze. This first encounter, under the ghostly light of Gelidus's twin moons, marked the beginning of what would be an extraordinary chapter in human history. The cold, unforgiving landscape of the planet was about to become the backdrop for a story of resilience, diplomacy, and the indomitable human spirit. As the Kyroxi adjusted to the cold of Gelidus inside the warmth of the human base, curiosity about each other's technologies and survival techniques became the centerpiece of their conversations. The human outpost, a complex of geodesic domes interconnected by insulated tunnels, buzzed with a mix of human and alien personnel, exchanging ideas and observations. During a guided tour of the facility, Jacob showed Commander Silas the innovations that made life possible on such a harsh planet. From the thermal energy converters, harnessing geothermal heat, to the ice mining units extracting water for both use and oxygen production, each piece of technology was a testament to human ingenuity. Silas was particularly intrigued by the minimalistic approach humans took to personal heating technologies, often relying on adaptive insulation and physical activity to regulate body temperature, rather than the sophisticated environmental suits of the Kyroxi. "It seems you embrace the cold rather than shield from it," Silas noted, their tone a mix of admiration and bewilderment. "It's about balance and adaptation," Jacob explained. "Our bodies and our tech work together. We've learned that sometimes simpler solutions are more sustainable." The discussions eventually shifted to the recreational area where humans and Kyroxi gathered for a meal. The atmosphere was light, filled with the aromas of both human and Kyroxi cuisine, a daring mix of earthly and alien flavors. It was here, over plates of steaming food, that Silas proposed a challenge. "I am curious to see if I could endure your world as you do, without the aid of my suit," Silas said, their eyes gleaming with a competitive spark. Jacob raised an eyebrow, intrigued by the proposal. "Are you sure? It's not just the cold that's tough, but the blizzards can disorient anyone not used to it." Silas nodded, the decision made. "I believe it's important to fully understand one another's strengths, and perhaps," they added with a slight smile, "it will prove beneficial for our negotiations." Jacob accepted the challenge with a grin. All right, tomorrow morning we walk into the wild. Just standard winter gear, no advanced tech. A little stroll through our icy backyard. The rest of the evening buzzed with anticipation. The humans admired Silas's courage or perhaps audacity, while the Kyroxi seemed to appreciate the opportunity to witness their commander's adventurous spirit. The morning was particularly frigid as Jacob and Silas, dressed in standard thermal suits, stepped out into the icy wilderness of Gelidus. The wind howled ominously, carrying fine particles of snow that glittered like diamonds in the early light. The human settlement, with its glowing lights and steaming vents, quickly became a distant silhouette against the stark white landscape. Jacob led the way, his boots crunching on the packed snow, demonstrating the practiced ease of someone accustomed to the planet's extreme conditions. Beside him, Silas moved with cautious fascination, their eyes wide beneath the clear visor of their helmet. We use landmarks and GPS for navigation, Jacob explained, pointing to a series of subtly marked poles that lined their path. Visibility can drop to nearly zero during a storm, so we prepare for the worst. Silas nodded, absorbing every detail, their suit adjusting with soft mechanical whirs as it attempted to replicate the thermal regulation techniques of Jacob's simpler gear. As they ventured deeper into the wilderness, the real test began. A sudden gust of wind swept across the plain, reducing visibility and forcing Silas to lean closer to Jacob to hear him over the roar of the wind. "This is nothing," Jacob shouted back, a grin in his voice. "Sometimes the wind can knock you off your feet if you're not careful." Silas's response was a determined nod, their body language shifting from curious to resolute. The cold seeped in, more piercing than their advanced suit was calibrated to handle. Every breath became a visible puff of steam, and icicles began to form on the rim of Silas's helmet. Several hours into their trek, the challenge of Gelidus's environment became fully apparent. The temperature plunged as the sun climbed higher, an irony not lost on the commander. Silas, feeling the onset of the bitter cold gnawing through their protective gear, finally understood the relentless nature of the planet. "How do you endure this?" Silas asked, their voice a mix of wonder and strain, as they stopped to catch their breath, shielding their face from the biting wind. "It's about will," Jacob replied, standing firm against the gusts. "Our bodies adapt, yes, but it's the mind that learns to endure. We face the cold head-on, embrace it even. It makes us stronger." As they spoke, Silas's admiration for the humans' resilience grew. The simplicity of their gear, coupled with their evident fortitude, was a stark contrast to the reliance on technology Silas was accustomed to. It was not just a physical journey, but a profound insight into the human spirit. Realizing they had reached their limit, Silas conceded, "I understand now. The strength of humans lies not just in technology, but in your extraordinary ability to adapt and endure." Jacob offered a warm smile, extending a hand to help Silas turn back towards the base. "Let's head back. You did well. Better than most would have in your place." The walk back was less of a challenge and more of a shared experience, with Silas asking questions about human history, survival techniques, and stories of those who had braved similar conditions on Earth. Jacob shared tales of explorers and adventurers, each story highlighting the resilience that humanity carried as a badge of honor. As they approached the settlement, the storm subsided, and the clear sky returned, a symbolic end to a trial that had undoubtedly brought the human and Kyroxi commanders closer. This venture out into the cold had not only tested their physical limits, but had also melted away the initial barriers of unfamiliarity, forging a new layer of respect and understanding between the two leaders. In the days following the icy expedition, the relationship between the human and Kyroxi teams appeared to grow stronger. Collaborative projects were proposed, and cultural exchanges took place with increasing enthusiasm. However, beneath the surface of this newfound camaraderie, tensions were brewing. Commander Jacob noticed a subtle shift in the behavior of the Kyroxi. They seemed more reserved, their inquiries more pointed, particularly regarding the human survival strategies and defensive capabilities. Jacob's military instincts, honed over years of service, sensed the underlying strategic interest behind their questions. Late one evening, as Jacob reviewed security feeds, he spotted unusual activity at the edge of the camp. Kyroxi personnel were scanning the perimeter defenses, their body language secretive and urgent. Concerned, Jacob decided to confront Commander Silas directly. Meeting under the guise of a routine check-in, Jacob observed Silas closely. "Everything all right, Silas? Your team seems quite interested in our security protocols lately," he ventured, watching for any tell. Silas hesitated, a flicker of hesitation crossing their features before they regained composure. "Merely precautions, Jacob. You understand, the galaxy is not always as forgiving. We must protect our interests." Jacob nodded, not entirely convinced. "Of course. Just as you protect yours, we must protect ours. Transparency has served us well so far, wouldn't you agree?" Silas nodded, but the brief moment of tension had spoken volumes. The attack came at dawn just days later. Kiraxi forces, larger than any contingent they had previously revealed to the humans, emerged from stealth positions within the icy mists. Their technology was advanced, with energy shields flickering into life and weapons emitting low hums of charged particles. Jacob rallied his people swiftly. The miners and engineers, while not soldiers, were survivors hardened by their environment. "This is our home," Jacob declared as he distributed thermal blasters and personal shields. "We know this ice better than they ever will. Let's remind them why Gelidus belongs to the brave." The human strategy was simple yet effective. Knowing the terrain and the typical weather patterns, they used the environment to their advantage. They led the Kiraxi into the ice canyons, a labyrinth of frozen cliffs and sharp ravines known for sudden and disorienting blizzards. As predicted, a fierce storm swept through the canyons, reducing visibility to nearly zero. The humans, equipped with infrared goggles and environmental sensors, moved with confidence, setting up ambush points. The Kiraxi, reliant on visual navigation and less familiar with the rapid shifts in weather, found themselves at a disadvantage. Jacob led a small team on a flanking maneuver, targeting the main artillery units of the Kiraxi. They planted thermal explosives, a technology seemingly primitive but highly effective in the freezing temperatures. The explosives were set to detonate, not with a timer, but with a drop in temperature to certain critical levels, a common occurrence in the canyon. As the storm peaked, the explosives detonated, the blasts magnified by the echo of the canyon walls. Several Kiraxi units were instantly disoriented, their shields failing under the unexpected assault. Caught off guard and struggling to regroup, the Kiraxi forces signaled for a retreat, their attempt to seize control of Gelidus thwarted by the very weather they had underestimated. In the aftermath, as the winds died down and the snow settled, Jacob surveyed the icy battlefield. The Kiraxi, now realizing the full extent of human ingenuity and adaptability, requested a ceasefire. They had underestimated not only the harsh conditions of Gelidus, but also the resolve of its human inhabitants. This unexpected turn of events set the stage for a new phase of negotiations, one that would require more than just an understanding of survival, but a mutual respect forged in the heat of battle. The ceasefire brought a tense peace to Gelidus, as both human and Kiraxi leaders convened to discuss terms. The humans, led by Commander Jacob, arrived at the meeting point, a neutral area known as the Upper Ridge, where the harsh winds were less severe, and the visibility was clear. The Kiraxi, chastened by their defeat, approached with a mix of caution and newfound respect. Commander Silas stepped forward, their expression somber. "We misjudged not only Gelidus but also the resilience and strategic capabilities of its human settlers. We extend our offer of peace and a request for negotiation." Jacob, standing firm against the cold that seemed almost second nature now, nodded. "Let's talk then. But remember, trust is harder to rebuild than to maintain." The discussions were intense, each side laying out their concerns and boundaries. Jacob emphasized the humans' right to defend their home and their willingness to share knowledge but not at the expense of their safety or sovereignty. Silas, on behalf of the Kiraxi, acknowledged their aggressive miscalculation and proposed a trade of technology and resources in exchange for formal alliances and shared rights to Gelidus's mineral wealth. The treaty that emerged was a delicate balance of power, respect, and mutual benefit. The Kiraxi would assist in enhancing the humans' environmental technologies, incorporating advanced thermal dynamics and energy efficiency into the existing human infrastructure. In return, humans would share their techniques of environmental adaptation and survival, elements of crucial interest to the Kiraxi for their galactic explorations. Back at the human base, the mood was cautiously optimistic. The engineers and miners celebrated the peace but remained wary of their new allies. Jacob spent long hours with his team, planning the integration of Kiraxi technology into their systems, and ensuring that security protocols were enhanced to prevent future conflicts. The weeks that followed saw a transformation on Gelidus. Kiraxi and human engineers worked side by side, their joint efforts leading to innovations neither could have achieved alone. The outpost grew, not just in size but as a symbol of interspecies collaboration. However, not everyone was pleased with the rapid developments. Some of Jacob's crew felt uneasy about the quick trust placed in the Kiraxi, and their concerns were not unfounded. Late one night, Jacob received a secure transmission from Earth Command, warning him of potential hidden agendas among the Kiraxi leadership. Jacob faced a new challenge, balancing the fragile peace with vigilance. He increased surveillance discreetly, ensuring that any sign of betrayal would not go unnoticed. At the same time, he fostered the growing relationships between the human and Kiraxi teams, believing that genuine bonds could prevent the cold calculations of politics from freezing the warmth of their newfound alliance. As winter approached on Gelidus, bringing with it the longest nights and the steepest temperatures, the settlement braced itself. The battle of the ice canyons was over, but the struggle for a lasting peace had just begun. Jacob knew that the true test of their treaty was not in the words spoken over negotiation tables, but in the actions taken in the icy fields and frozen hallways of their shared world. With the first snows of the deep winter blanketing Gelidus, the diplomatic efforts between the humans and the Kiraxi intensified. The chilly, extended darkness served as a backdrop for their heated negotiations, which were now moving into more complex territories of military alliances and long-term resource sharing. Commander Jacob, understanding the delicacy required, approached each session with a mix of stern resolve and diplomatic tact. The Kiraxi, led by Commander Silas, appeared equally committed to a peaceful resolution, their earlier aggression replaced by a more collaborative demeanor. During one critical negotiation session, held as a storm raged outside, the tension within the room was palpable. Maps and digital projections illuminated the faces of all present as they debated zones of influence and control over mining sectors. "It's clear we both need what Gelidus offers," Jacob stated, pointing to a sector rich in helioxite, a rare mineral essential for advanced energy production. "But this planet can't become another chessboard for galactic politics. We're committed to its protection and sustainable exploitation." Silas nodded, their eyes reflecting the map's glow. "Indeed, Jacob. Our survival, much like yours, often depends on resources like these. However, we understand the catastrophic consequences of greed. Hence, we propose a joint mining venture with equal profits and mutual oversight." This proposal marked a turning point in the discussions. It was a testament to the Kiraxi's willingness to integrate human values of sustainability and cooperation into their operations. In return, Jacob offered insights into human governance systems that promoted transparency and accountability, concepts that were new to the Kiraxi, but intrigued them greatly. As the weeks passed, the outlines of a formal alliance began to take shape. The treaty expanded to include not only economic and technological exchanges but also mutual defense pacts. Training sessions between human and Kiraxi military units were scheduled, focusing on combined operations and emergency responses, particularly in extreme weather conditions. However, not all was smooth. An incident occurred that tested the fragile trust between the two species. A group of Kiraxi researchers, exploring uncharted sectors, inadvertently triggered a security alert that brought human forces rushing to the scene, weapons at the ready. The misunderstanding was cleared up quickly, but it served as a stark reminder of the tensions that still simmered beneath the surface. Jacob met with Silas immediately afterward, expressing his concerns. "We can't have trigger-happy responses to every blip on a radar," Jacob emphasized. "Our troops need to be trained to communicate first, shoot later." Silas agreed, and together they introduced new protocols for joint patrols and established a direct communication line between their respective command centers to avoid future incidents. As the negotiations drew to a close, with a signing ceremony planned under the aurora-lit skies of Gelidus, both leaders reflected on the path they had traversed. From hostility to cautious cooperation, and now towards a partnership that promised to reshape their presence on Gelidus and possibly their future interactions in the galaxy. The signing of the treaty under the radiant auroras of Gelidus was a moment of triumph and relief. It marked a new era of cooperation between humans and the Kiraxi, forged through the fires of conflict and solidified in the cold, clear light of mutual interest and respect. In the weeks that followed, the combined human Kiraxi ventures began to bear fruit. The joint mining operations were successful, revealing veins of helioxite deeper and richer than any preliminary scans had suggested. The technology exchange led to advancements in environmental suit design, allowing for longer, safer expeditions into Gelidus's more hostile territories. Commander Jacob, now often referred to as Ambassador Torres, spent most of his time navigating the complexities of this burgeoning alliance. He was deeply involved in the integration efforts, ensuring that human technologies were respectfully shared and that Karaxi innovations were adapted with consideration for human limitations. One day, during a tour of a new mining site, Jacob and Silas observed the operations from a high ridge. Below them, teams of humans and Karaxi worked side by side, their movements synchronized, their efforts a ballet of precision and mutual understanding. "It's something, isn't it?" Jacob remarked, watching a human technician laugh at something a Karaxi miner had shown on a datapad. "Who would have thought after that first day that we'd end up here?" Silas nodded, their gaze contemplative. "It is often said among my people that the stars align only for those who can navigate the darkness. We were fortunate to find in each other a guide through our mutual uncertainties." Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent message from the base. A severe storm, one of the fiercest yet of the season, was approaching rapidly. The mining teams needed to evacuate immediately. Without hesitation, Jacob and Silas sprang into action, coordinating the evacuation. Their joint training paid off. The teams withdrew in an orderly fashion, making it to safety just as the storm engulfed the area they had been working in. Watching the storm rage outside from the safety of their command center, Jacob and Silas appreciated the metaphorical storm they had weathered together. The trust that had been shaky at first now held firm, strengthened by each test it endured. As Gelidus turned from a place of confrontation to a beacon of interspecies cooperation, other planetary settlements looked to it as a model. The success of the Gelidus Treaty sparked interest across human and Karaxi territories, leading to talks of further diplomatic and economic partnerships. For Jacob, the real success was seeing his people not just survive but thrive in a world that once seemed relentlessly hostile. The alliance with the Karaxi brought new technologies, new resources, and new opportunities. But more importantly, it brought a new perspective on what could be achieved when different cultures learned not just to meet but truly understand each other. Years later, as Jacob prepared to return to Earth for a well-deserved retirement, he took one last walk through the Gelidus base, now a bustling hub of activity and innovation. He paused at a window, looking out at the now familiar landscape, a harsh and beautiful testament to the resilience and adaptability of all who dared to call it home. This was not just the end of his command, but the beginning of a lasting legacy. As ships continued to arrive, bringing more humans and Karaxi eager to be part of this unique community, Jacob knew that Gelidus would continue to be a symbol of peace and potential,